Trump tightens the pressure on Iran after negotiations in the Middle East revealed a massive request of $300 billion for reconstruction, financial relief, and political advantage for Tehran. The crisis arrives this Saturday, May 30, 2026, with the White House putting on the table a condition that the Iranian regime has always tried to avoid: to abandon any path to a nuclear bomb, remove sea mines, and accept that no money will be released before new guarantees. But the troubling part is something else. The regime is about to surrender, but it is asking for billions to rebuild from the catastrophic damage caused by the armed forces of Israel and the United States. Iran is feeling the weight of the blockade, the sanctions, the military pressure, and the fear of a new round of attacks. But even so, they are still trying to set a trap for Trump. What does Tehran want to hide? Why did they ask for so much money now? How did Trump turn the negotiation into a trap? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward content with no beating around the bush, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. The pressure started when Trump brought the discussion into the White House and began treating the deal as a national security decision. The American government made it clear that any agreement needs to be good for the United States and respect the president's red lines. The main one is straightforward: Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The request for $300 billion appears as reconstruction, but in practice it reveals an attempt by the Iranian regime to turn military setbacks into money. Iranian officials started talking about a reconstruction fund, gradual release of frozen assets, and sanctions relief, but this package does not come from a position of full strength. It comes from a crisis where Iran closed the maritime route, saw its economy tighten, lost room to maneuver, and is now trying to escape the pressure by charging a high price. The $300 billion do not appear as money already released or as a direct check from the United States to Iran. They appear in the reports as a reconstruction fund or post-war investment. The origin of this money, according to reports about the negotiation, would come mainly from Gulf Arab nations, with pressure and coordination from Washington so that these allies would fund Iran's reconstruction if the regime accepted terms considered acceptable by the White House. According to the New York Times, the report says the US won't provide resources to the Iranian fund, precisely so that Trump wouldn't fall into the political trap of appearing to be paying compensation to the regime. In practice, this money would go to the Iranian economy under the pretense of reconstruction, investment, and normalization after the attacks. But the political risk is clear. In the hands of Tehran, $300 billion could ease the regime's finances, compensate for war damages, support imports, recover affected sectors, strengthen state-linked companies, and reduce the impact of sanctions, and give breathing room to the network of regional allies that Iran uses as a pressure tool in the Middle East. That's why the Iranian demand carries so much weight. Tehran is trying to turn a negotiation into a billion-dollar demand before making any real concessions. In other words, Iran wants to be paid as the winner. But the existence of this demand actually shows the opposite, because whoever asks for $300 billion is trying to get out of trouble with a hefty bill on the table. Trump responded with a political roadblock. He stated that no money would be exchanged until further notice. This sentence changes how the situation is interpreted. Trump puts payment only after the guarantees. That's where the trap appears. Tehran wants to get paid first, but only discuss the core of the crisis afterwards. Trump stated that Iran needs to accept that it will never have a nuclear bomb, and that the enriched material must be handled within a verifiable agreement. Tehran's resistance to handing over or transferring this material shows where the real fear lies. The regime wants money, wants sanctions relief, wants to sell oil, and wants to move freely at sea, but it doesn't want to give up what gives it the power to threaten. This contradiction strengthens the American position because it shows that the crisis didn't arise from a lack of dialogue. It arose because Iran wants benefits without giving up what really matters. The Secretary of Defense, Pat Ragseth, reinforced the message in Singapore by saying that the United States is ready to resume attacks if there is no agreement. He stated that American military capability remains available, with sufficient stockpiles and readiness to act. Trump is using negotiation without dismantling the threat. The 60-day deadline also needs to be considered carefully. For Tehran, this period can be used to buy time, reorganize its allies, and try to extract money. For Trump, it can be used to put everything in writing, separate the promise from actual delivery, and make it clear who accepts or who backs out of the agreement. If Iran signs and complies, it loses some of its ability to blackmail. If Iran refuses, it shows the world that it prefers to maintain the nuclear risk and the maritime stranglehold. In both scenarios, Trump forces the regime out of the shadows. The anti-Trump press tries to create another narrative because they know that the image of Iran asking for $300 billion is bad for Tehran. The goal is to create a smokescreen. Meanwhile, the real issue remains on the table. The White House wants to prevent an Iranian nuclear weapon, open the Strait of Hormuz, remove mines, control the money, and keep the military option on the table. Iran tries to present itself as the winner because it needs to convince its base at home. Iranian authorities said they don't trust words and that only actions matter. They also tried to argue that concessions come through the strength of missiles, not through dialogue. This rhetoric serves as domestic propaganda, but it also reveals nervousness. If the regime were so comfortable, it wouldn't need to turn every American statement into a narrative battle. The noise from Tehran is an attempt to hide the obvious. The billion-dollar request only exists because the regime wants to come out of the crisis with something to show. Oman's role also came into the story because the Sultanate serves as a regional diplomatic channel. Tehran tried to bring Oman closer and present the administration of Hormuz as a regional issue, not an American one. Trump made the opposite move. He framed the issue as an international problem of navigation, security, and energy. The dispute is not just about a passage on the map. It's about who sets the rules after the crisis. Iran wants to turn Hormuz into a political toll booth. Trump wants to turn Hormuz into a test of the regime's submission to the minimum rules of passage. Israel and Hezbollah appear on the same chessboard. Iran wants any agreement to also ease things for its allies in Lebanon. This shows that the regime does not negotiate only for itself. It tries to protect a network that operates on several fronts. Trump knows this. That's why the negotiation can't be sold as just a simple nuclear deal. What's at stake is Iran's ability to finance, pressure, and mobilize allies while demanding money from the United States. And it tries to maintain control over strategic routes. History shows that pressured regimes often try to sell retreat as victory. That's what happened when Libya agreed to abandon its weapons of mass destruction programs after years of isolation, sanctions, and fear of getting in the way of American power. It wasn't sudden goodwill. It was a survival calculation. The same pattern is showing up now. Tehran wants to preserve its rhetoric of resistance, but it seeks reconstruction, money, oil, and financial relief. When a dictatorship asks for economic oxygen, it already knows that the pressure has hit where it hurts. The White House has already left the door open for negotiation but kept its hand on the doorknob. Iran asked for $300 billion before the brutal collapse because it wants to turn pressure into a payout. Trump turned up the pressure because he knows money without results only rewards the regime. I'm Milson Alves, Global, and my goal is to keep you accurately informed every day. The news links are in the video description. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. At the end, check the comments to engage more with the Milson Alves community.